It's really a pleasure to be here. You know, as Jesse said, Blank Park Zoo has been supporting Snow Leopard Trust since 1997. I think I was saying 1999 to a few of you. My apologies. But since 97, 98, 99, and we are very grateful. Blank Park is playing a major role in snow leopard conservation, and all we can say is thank you. So tonight I'm definitely going to be talking, and when I first started doing that, I've been the director of the Snow Leopard Trust since 2000, and my wife said when I get up in a public audience to talk, I look like a poodle that just quit smoking. So I hope I am better after 11 years now. But forgive me if you see anything a little crazy. So of course I'm going to talk about snow leopards, but I want to give you a little video clip of these cats and the mountains, and just give you a sense of what we're talking about and how things work out there in the wild. These cats are incredibly charismatic. We're very fortunate to have such a beautiful, iconic cat. You see that thick, thick fur that allows them to survive up to 18,000 feet. Those big paws, let them move across the rocks, mostly gracefully. Yeah. They are cute. I think every morning I wake up, I'm very glad that I'm the director of the Snow Leopard Trust and not the Naked Mole Rat Society. I very much doubt you all might be here if it was a talk on the Naked Mole Rat Society. At least they don't have to worry about their pelts being sold on the black market. So of course I'm going to be talking about snow leopards. I'm also going to be talking about the prey species. And I'm going to talk a lot about people, because in my opinion, we cannot save wildlife unless we involve the communities that share the landscape with the animals every day. So where do snow leopards live? Well, I saw 2 snow leopards at Blank Park Zoo today. There's actually about 250 cats spread over 65 institutions in North America. But most of the time, I'm going to be talking about snow leopards that are across the country, across the Pacific Ocean in Central Asia. This is Google Earth, free service, which is great. We love Google. So that white highlighted area is all snow leopard habitat, about 750,000 square miles, an enormous home range for these cats. And that home range is spread over 12 countries. So the farthest northern parts of their range are in Russia. Farthest southern parts of their range are Nepal and Bhutan. The largest area is in China. The Snow Leopard Trust focuses its efforts on these 5 core countries. The 5 that I've circled here are 75% of the cat's habitat. And these countries, if we can save snow leopards in these countries, we're sure that we can save snow leopards for future generations. And we focus our efforts here because of the size of importance, the 75% of the home range, but also because if we tried to work in all 12 countries, we feel our results would just be too diluted. We can't work in all 12. Working in Afghanistan, for example, right now would be very expensive, very problematic. There's few cats in Uzbekistan. So if we can work in these 5 core countries successfully, we can save these cats. Now, how do these cats design? They're totally, perfectly designed for mountains. I'm sure you can all see the snow leopard here, right? Everybody's got him? No? No? Camouflage. All right, now you see him? Let me bring him out a little bit. All right, that's Shankar. And the only reason we're seeing that cat is because he's collared. And let me just say, everybody keep an eye on him. Ready? We're going to put him back. And he just disappears. The local people there call him ghosts of the mountains, because on the rare occasion if they do see a snow leopard, they will then maybe turn to their friend and say, look, and then they're like, they're gone, even if the cat hasn't moved. Their camouflage is by far the best design element of the snow leopard. The other things you'll notice is that big tail looks so fluffy and soft. No. That's a muscle. They use that like a rudder. That thing will help them turn and corner and run down their prey. And that short, stocky legs don't look as graceful as some of the other big cats, but that's how they leap. That is, their leaping ability is the way they hunt. So if they don't catch that sheep or goat in the first 50 yards, dinner's gone. They're not catching that. They're sprinters. They're not going to run down a prey like a wolf will. Some of the other things you'll notice, I talked about those big old paws. They act like snowshoes when they're crossing a snowy ridge, but I'll tell you all a secret. We don't let this out very often, but snow leopards don't like snow. But it's so much cooler to call them snow leopards than the arid mountain leopard. It just doesn't really work. So we're not changing the name, but just among us, snow leopards don't like snow. And you'll see that big nose, that kind of, it's, you know, they could maybe have a little plastic surgery done if they wanted to pretty themselves up, but that's to get that oxygen out of that thin mountain air. So so snow leopards are just perfectly designed for this habitat, yet they're endangered. Why are snow leopards endangered? So there's about 35 to 7,000 left in the wild. So same status as the panda, the tiger. Why are snow leopards threatened? Why are they endangered? And basically, it's a couple of reasons. So herders are living up in this high mountain area, and those herders are pushing higher into the mountains. That often pushes out the wild sheep and goats that they count on for their main food source. So the snow leopard will turn and kill a domestic sheep or goat, much less wary, still tasty, but a huge economic loss to those communities. You know, these people are living on less than $1 a day, most of the communities that we work with. So if they lose a sheep or goat, that's threatening the survival of their family. So they're going to turn around and kill the cats. A very related topic is the loss of natural prey. We've got a Himalayan tar up at the top, a beautiful markhor that you'll find over on the left, and then these are blue sheep here, right here. This is the mainstay of snow leopard diet, these wild sheep and goats. If you've got a healthy prey population like this, you're going to have a healthy snow leopard population if you get rid of the other threats. So the traditional threat has always been poaching for their pelts. Used to be a lot of coats made out of them. Fortunately, that has tended to stop, but still, especially in the former Soviet Union countries, you know, the resurgence in their culture has come on, and so having a snow leopard pelt up on the wall, supposedly the owner of that house has the characteristics of a snow leopard, so that is still a threat, and then use of their bones in traditional Asian medicine. So those are the main threats that have been fighting for the last several years. I love this. Gary Larson suggested we do this, and then maybe we would have less poaching of the snow leopards, but I don't think that's very practical. But mining is also the newest threat, and this is happening in China, it's happening in Kyrgyzstan, it's happening in Mongolia. I'm going to talk a little bit about Mongolia later, but it's not so much the mines themselves that can be a problem, but really it's the miners who are often paid little or nothing. They're very low wages, so in their off hours they will turn around and try and hunt or trap anything in the area, and so mining is becoming a growing problem in the region as well. So we know where the cats live, we know what the threats are. What is the Snow Leopard Trust doing to try and help make this a safer environment for the cats? And basically, we are working in the center of conservation, science research, and education. So we don't have the luxury, and I don't think it's practical, to do education standalone. It just gets washed away too easily in the culture. But we do education programs where we're operating community conservation programs or where we're doing research. Same thing with research. We can't do cutting-edge research just for the sake of learning something. It has to be an impact on a direct saving of the cats. So snow leopards are some of the least studied of all the big cats, and one of the reasons is no researchers could ever find them. You know, I showed you that earlier picture. There's the same thing. Here's another snow leopard. I'm sure you guys all see it again. It's the same. Expert snow leopard watchers. He's actually right up there. Again, another collared cat. It's the only way you see these guys. So that has actually been a huge barrier to research. But so was technology. We couldn't even get pictures of these cats for many years. This is a rare photo taken with an old treadle trap camera. So he's actually like a little teeter-totter. It steps down, it pushes the plunger, snaps a film photograph. What a crazy concept that is of this cat. He's actually sniffing bobcat urine from the United States. It really seemed to attract him there. But technology wasn't working for us. They had these old VHF collars, so we would put a collar on a cat to try and understand where it's moving. But the VHF is a line of sight technology, so this researcher is actually trying to hear a snow leopard that is wearing a VHF collar. A little tricky bit of VHF is there can't be anything between that collar and that antenna. So if the cat's just on the other side of that mountain range, no cat. So all of the previous studies of snow leopards that use this VHF technology, we got 400 data points on the cats. That's it in many, many years of study. You just weren't figuring out what kind of space snow leopards need. But technology has really finally come through. This is a Reconyx digital trap camera. Anything warm that walks in front of it gets its picture taken. Holds up to 15,000 pictures. Used to be we'd put a film camera out, and it had a roll of 48 in it, and if a herd of goats came through, you know, you saw all these little lovely goats in about 3 minutes, and the camera's shot till the next time somebody comes and visits that camera. Just really not very useful. So the digital cameras have just absolutely changed what we're doing. Very easy to set up and very easy to test. Now, I had to get this, so it's going to run pretty quick. So what we can do is these cameras shoot a picture every half second, so we can stitch them together, and it looks like an old-fashioned film strip for those of you old enough to remember what a film strip looks like. So this is how we test them. We get our youngest researchers that can still bend down. Oh, look at that. There's a snow leopard. So those are 6 days apart, so it wasn't right on his tail. But this kind of technology is absolutely fantastic because there's a special thing about snow leopards, very much like us, which all our fingerprints are different. Every spot pattern of a snow leopard is different. So if you get a couple decent quality photos, you can start identifying individuals, which means you can count them, which is really helpful if you're studying snow leopards. So that rosette, you can see you're looking for a very distinctive rosette in a nice clear spot, and then all of a sudden we can start censusing cats. And because we get so many photos, we can usually find a couple of decent quality ones that allow us to ID cats based on spot patterns. And we're also seeing behavior that we've never seen before. This is a trio of 3 snow leopards. At this point, they're probably about 12 months old. So we know that these 3 cubs have survived from a mother. We never used to know anything about survival rates. These are the same 3 cats. 14 months later, look, you can see them breathing because it's just, and so you see the 2, and so at this point we're going through the card and we're like, where's the 3rd one? Where's the 3rd one? And there he came. Yeah, you know, we checked the spots. Very good guess, though. Very good guess. But that's the beauty of it. You can actually freeze them and see what's going on. This cat yeah, I think the nickname is going to be Adon, you know, love with himself, or I don't know what he's seeing, but I love those. And then the technology on the collars has completely changed. So instead of those old VHF collars with line of sight, these are now satellite phones. They're awesome. So it takes a GPS fix every 5 hours, and then it calls us and tells us where that cat is. And I tell you, our research director is so much happier. You can see the smile on his face, because instead of chasing the cats over the mountains with his little antenna, we actually get emails of where the cat is on its GPS location. And so we've set up a long-term study in the South Gobi Desert. And some of you might go, South Gobi Desert? There's no snow leopards in the South Gobi Desert. But there is. There's actually some of the highest density snow leopard populations in the entire world. And so 2.5 years ago, we started this study, and it has been phenomenal. We're using the best technology available to finally answer simple questions like, how much space does a snow leopard need? How much food does a snow leopard need? Because without those, you can't figure out what kind of protected areas you need. You can't figure out what kind of conservation programs you need until you have some of this very basic information. Now, my wife will tell you I'm cheap, but I am just value-minded, is the way I like to think of it. And it actually works very well when you're stretching dollars on a snow leopard, on a nonprofit budget. So our research center is just using these gears, or yurts. They're very simple, they're portable. The local people have been using them for centuries. And so this is our fancy research center. And first thing we started doing was going out and trying to get some of these new collars out on cats. And to do that, you've got to build a very clever snare, because snow leopards are very clever. So he's actually digging out the hole for where the trigger is going to be. And then that trigger is laying underneath it, and there's the wire. We put a hard stop on it so it can't close too tightly on the cat. And we have springs in 2 locations to make sure the cat can't pull too hard. And there's also a transmitter, so as soon as that trap trips, we know about it in camp. It automatically sends a signal to camp. So there's never a cat in a snare more than an hour, which is the farthest we'll put a trap away from our base camp. And unfortunately, according to it's usually about 3 in the morning when these things go off. So be it. So that doesn't look like any snow leopard's going to be silly enough to fall into it. But once our researchers get done, it looks pretty good, doesn't it? I could just walk right into that. And they'll put the rocks around it, just one more factor trying to encourage the cat to place his foot right in that snare. So I want to show you what another thing these trap cameras can do is they can see how cats interact. So what we've got here is a nice rock face. And snow leopards love to walk on along these walk faces, and they tend to spray and scent mark here. That's like the post office of snow leopards. So we got very clever. We thought, we can help make sure the cat walks, and we built this little rock wall because we're so smart. So watch what happens. Here comes the cat from the left. Going, which side of the rock wall is the cat going on? The wrong side of the rock wall. And off he goes. So, new plan. You'll notice a few things. There's the snare of that thing, no more rock wall. So we used all that energy building it, now we took it apart. This time, we're going to catch the cat, right? No problem. Here he comes. Come on. Look at this. Oh! We almost caught. Look, he comes back and laughs at us. And then he's gone. All right. Snow leopards 2, biologists 0. But we're very persistent. It's another thing my wife will tell you about. I'm cheap and I'm persistent. So we stuck with it, and that's Oz tied down the bottom. The first snow leopard that we got into the research program. It was August of 2008. And we are I'm so proud of our researchers. We use pulse ox on these cats, temperature monitor. You'll see a blindfold over the cat because even though they're sedated, they're still sensitive to light. We do everything we can to make this as low stress on the cats as possible, and we work as quickly as we possibly can. So they're putting on the collar, we weigh the cat, we check their teeth. We take a lot of photographs so that when we get photo trap camera photos, if they're not wearing a collar, we can have a very good chance of identifying the cat. We get a blood sample for genetics, a hair sample as well, and then we give them the antidote and we start packing up our gear. And if it's cold, we'll always put a sleeping bag on them. It's an REI Sleeping Bag. Can you believe they won't sponsor us? I mean, look. You know, can't you see the commercial? You know, the sleeping bag good enough for snow leopards. I mean, so, write REI if you guys want. We're trying to get them to be better. And up the cat goes. And so over the last 2.5 years, we now have 10 cats collared in the study. We have identified a census of 26 snow leopards living in this area. We're using researchers from all over the world, including graduate students. And just recently, just this past year, we got about $80,000 in solar equipment donated. So our snow leopard camp is now much greener. We're not using a diesel generator anymore. We're running off of solar, which is really great. So we're very grateful for that. So the program is going very well. And we are learning so much about these cats, stuff that we had never had any idea. So each one of these colored shapes is a home range. And we have now over 5,500 data points of where these cats are located. I remember earlier I said all the other studies combined had 400. This, in 2.5 years, we have 5,500 data points. And that's telling us exactly where these cats are going. And some of the things we've learned are, one was snow leopards are using much more space than we ever imagined. So the previous study done in Nepal said that snow leopards lived in about 30 square kilometers. Right now, even on very short time frames, the snow leopards are living at 100 square miles, some of them 500 square miles. So that's kind of bad news for us because it means that our population estimate, which was built on smaller home ranges, was wrong. You know, we thought 3,500 to 7,000, so we're very concerned about this at first. But the great news is look at all the overlap. So snow leopards, they operate independently, but they are sharing space by avoiding each other in time. So they can overlap physically in a range, but not by time. So they'll chase each other around, they'll move around. So they can actually use a smaller amount of space than we had feared, which is good news because it means that our population estimate is actually probably correct, just for the wrong reasons. So this has been a really tremendous bit of information that we're learning, and we're still learning more about snow leopards and dispersal patterns and all kinds of things. So this study is going to go on for another 10 or 12 years, and it's going to prove to be, in my opinion, probably the lifesaver of snow leopards. And another thing we're learning is this movement. So we're going to use this Google Earth technology again. So now we're in the South Gobi Desert, and I'm going to take you on an 8-day trip that you're taking with Oztai. So every 5 hours, he's calling us in. And so you'll see February 15th. That's when our little trip is starting. He's right on the edge of his home range. Never before had gone on a long trip before. And all of a sudden, he starts going to the edge of this washed out area. Now he jumps across it. Never seen that behavior before. Look at it. We're often picking him up on high sides. He's probably moving along that ridge line. We caught him on the back side of that. His phone called us in. Moving through the terrain. There is snow, yep. So this was in February. There's a good chance. But this satellite image is a picture taken a while ago. So these images are coming from Google Earth. OK. Hold it right there. Oh, good. So look at this cluster. You're seeing this cluster because odds are he got a nice big ibex up on that hillside, and that's dinner for like 3 days. And so our scientists are going to be back in April, and they will be checking on these sites. Anytime we get a cluster like this, we're getting their food habit study, because we can say, oh, wow, he's been in one place for 24, 48 hours, and that's a place then we'll go and investigate to try and figure it out. So most likely, he caught an ibex up on that hillside, dragged it down, had a really nice long meal, and then he starts moving out. Oh, piffle. Sorry about that. All right, we're going to go on a trip twice, apparently. Sorry about the technology. OK, so, yep, we're going to go on this trip twice. We don't have to do that. We have power. You want to go on a trip twice? All right, we'll go on a trip twice. I like your attitude. It's a snowy trip. So what you're going to see after that cluster is, so he takes about 6 days to get here. So you can see the jumps are relatively small. He's kind of taking his time. And then when he gets to his dinner spot, he's there for 3 days. And then we're going to get another little interesting cluster after that. So we're just coming up on when he's up on the mountainside. And I'll just be quiet for a second here. You can enjoy this.
How many miles is this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the total trip is about 35 miles in 8 days, which again is distance that we never thought the cat would travel, especially across that open ground. And then, but he comes back. He does over 15, almost 16 miles in less than 24 hours going back. And we don't know what prompts that. Whether he felt like he had to get back and defend his home range. He obviously, we don't believe he was hungry, so something else is motivating him to move. So here's his go back. Look at this. So he's like practically halfway in. These are 5-hour increments, remember. About halfway, 5 more hours. He's right on the edge of where he started. And then 5 hours later, and he's back on the edge of his home range. And all of this is coming from this satellite collar, and we would never understand any of this. And he's crossing through areas where there's herders, there's roads. It's a very strange thing that he's doing, and we still don't have the answer for it. But we didn't even know this happened in the past.
He could have friends though.
You don't know. That's a very good question. Does he have friends? Does he? They tend to be solitary, so there's some things we assume, but we could be wrong. We absolutely could be wrong. So this is where the people come in, because this is Oztai's home range shown in a different way, and all of those are GPS locations of herders that live around him. So he doesn't live in this pristine national park where the nearest human settlement is 50 miles away. He's right in the thick of it. So if we can't figure out how to work with these communities, then we can't save snow leopards. It's really just that simple. And that's what I'm going to spend the rest of my time about talking about how we do that. And to step back just a moment, people-wildlife conflict, you guys hear this all the time, whether it's wolves and ranchers out west, elephants and farmers in Africa, tigers and rice farmers in India. It just doesn't matter. There's people-wildlife conflict. And I have grown to really dislike that term because it is so limiting. I mean, think about it. If a pedestrian gets hit by a car, do you hear from your newsman, today in another incident of people-vehicle conflict, a person was struck? No, and the reason for that is I think we basically have just assumed cars are part of our society, but yet we are not there with wildlife. And unless we are comfortable with large-scale extermination of major species like elephants and tigers and snow leopards, which I don't think any of us are, then we have to figure this out. We have to find a way to talk about these incidents and to think about these incidents in ways that are more open so that we have more solutions. And I want to talk about what are some of those solutions, because at the Snow Leopard Trust, we look at it as people-wildlife prosperity. How can we figure out a way for these communities that are living on less than $1 a day, and these animals that deserve a place on this planet can figure out how to share this landscape together? And we do that with just basically 4 simple principles. One is you need good science. And you've got to understand the cats. You've got to understand whether there's threats, because if there's not threats or conflict, we move on. Hey, if there's not a problem, we don't need to work there. But if there is, we start digging in. And so then we've got to use other kinds of science like anthropology and sociology and economics, because we have to understand those communities. Because if you don't get the communities, then you're not going to be able to figure out a solution. So we sit, and I can't tell you, I drink gallons of tea and listen. You know, that's honestly the best science of conservation, is listening, and try and understand what these communities are facing, what kind of resources they have. And if we do that, we can build a true partnership. And if you partner with those communities and you build it on strong science, then you can find that nugget of information that's going to allow you to build a program that benefits the cats and benefits the communities. And those are the other 2 principles. They have to really benefit the cats. It can't just be goodwill. And you have to really benefit those communities. And it can't be as you define it. It has to be how the community defines it. And so a perfect example of this is a livestock vaccination program that we started running in Pakistan in 2003. And basically what happened was I was visiting, and we had done a simple study that showed that livestock were dying at 5 times the rate by preventable diseases than they were to predators. That's the nugget, right? That was the nugget, because when you start understanding that, you're saying, wow, if I could prevent those livestock from dying from diseases that we have cures for, then we could do a deal. They're losing 5 times the animals to preventable diseases, 1 to predators. Let's do a deal. So we came up with a program that says, look, we'll provide the vaccinations for 4 years. So we provide the first 2 full cost on our nickel, proving that the program works. 3rd year, we pay 50%. Community pays 50%. 4th year, we pay 25%. They pay 75%, and then we're out. Then we're just the link to the vaccines. Come to the community with that, and they're like, yeah, we would like that. But you got to watch out for some of the details. If we just did that program just like that, and all of a sudden their herd started increasing by 5% a year, we would have more conflict. We would have bigger problems. But we're not idiots, thank God. We figured this out, and part of our conservation agreement is capping herd size, and that they sell those extra livestock into the market. That adds dollars into the community, and it stops the extra conflict by having your herd sizes explode. And that's where the funds come to pay for vaccines in the future. And this thing is working. Communities are now on average, one family who's participating earns on average $200 extra a year. That is serious cash in Pakistan and Chitral where we work. The thing went from 2 pilot programs to 15. So we're operating this program in 15 places. And there's been no poaching of snow leopards and no poaching of the prey species. That, to me, is people-wildlife prosperity. We've got happy people, we've got healthy cats, and they're living side by side. That's the way to do good conservation, in my opinion. And I love this program because that's exactly what it's doing. And we rigorously monitor the cooperation with these programs. So, because if there's any poaching happening, that just shoots the program down. So we work with all the wildlife officials, we work with park staff, we work with our team, and we monitor like crazy so that we can make sure that these agreements are being honored. It's all about these jointly negotiated agreements that we do with every community we partner with. Now, Snow Leopard Enterprises, you guys got a chance to see some of the products out there. This is a program that's been operating at the Snow Leopard Trust since 1998. This woman is the key to this program. She's leaning on raw bags of raw wool. Okay? So she is trying to sell that wool. Now, there's no Walmart, over on the other side. There's no community. There's nothing. She is 600 miles from the nearest market. A truck comes out and says, I'll give you 50 cents a pound for that wool. And she says, how about $1? And the truck says, I think I'm leaving. And she says, 50 cents is fine. And that's the situation that we came up with. She would not speak to us about snow leopard conservation because she was getting ripped off on her only source of cash for her entire family, that raw wool. So we talked, and again, that's the nougat of information, and we started Snow Leopard Enterprises, trying to create value from that wool. If they will expand if they will make these products, we buy them. And you know, to be honest, the program struggled in the beginning. We made a lot of brown scratchy things. You know, we really did. I mean, slipper socks, I think these are called, hats that came down to your like chin. I don't know what what these Mongolians think. We have very long fingers and very long feet, apparently, is what all Americans must have. And we would get what I call sympathy sales, right? You know, we tell you about these products, and they're, oh, I want to save snow leopards. You buy it. You either give it to a relative you hate, or you stick it into your closet, and it's there for the rest of the time. But now we have some beautiful products I hope you found. Some of these are, you know, sell, and my favorite sales are the people that care less about snow leopards. They just want them because they're really good shoppers and they like our deal. And that's how it is. And it's all market driven now. Used to be we'd say, oh, I think $10 is a fair price to pay to a herder for a pair of mittens, and then you run it through the chain, and you know, all of a sudden you'll see it in a zoo store for $60, and nobody's going to buy a $60 mittens. You know, that's just, you don't compete. So now we start at the market. We work our way back and say, here's the price we can pay to the herder. And the herders either say, yes, that sounds great, or no, it doesn't, and that's how we move forward. So we're trying to be much more business-oriented about this. I can't remember if in my intro she told you I worked for Procter & Gamble. Did you guys hear that? No? I got out of college, and I worked 6 years selling shampoo for Procter & Gamble. You might say that that was a really good business decision on my part to leave that thing, but I used to tell people that this is what's grown back since I started working at Procter & Gamble, so that's how I worked through that. But anyway, some of the lessons I learned at Procter & Gamble are the most valuable lessons I have running the Snow Leopard Trust, because if we don't run smart, if we don't run like a business, we're not going to run. When somebody gives us $35, $100, $1,000, it is our obligation to use that money wisely, and I think this program is a really good example of it. And the great thing about it is it's really working. Sales last year were about 150,000. That's up from 14,000 in 2002. All that money plows right back into the program. So again, we're looking for sustainability. In the livestock vaccination program, it takes us about $7,500 to move that community from year 1 to year 4 when we're out. So it's a $7,500 investment to move that community from poaching to prosperity. And then you're done. Doesn't rely on donor money anymore. And Snow Leopard Enterprises is the same way. Our core communities are all funded by this, and we're looking for funds to grow the program because it's really expensive to move that program into a new community. It's always farther away. It takes more training. We have to work through the brown scratchy phase. And so, you know, it's expensive. It takes about $8,000 to move a new Snow Leopard Enterprise community into a really healthy conservation situation. But I love the fact that both these programs have an exit strategy on funding. Sales in Snow Leopard Enterprises and the community taking over in the vaccination program. And this is making real difference for real people. This is Aigul. She lives in northwest Mongolia. Before this program started, she was making about $46 selling her raw wool. Now $255. That's serious conservation. All of a sudden, they love seeing us. It's so great to be a conservationist and not come in and say, you did this wrong, or you did that wrong, or you crossed this boundary and you're not supposed to cross this boundary, when all these people are trying to do is take care of their families, right? You got to deal with education, hugely important, but you've also got to deal with economic realities that these people are facing. So how does this help Snow Leopard? So I talked a little bit about the conservation agreement, and in Snow Leopard Enterprises, I'm particularly proud about what we're accomplishing with this. So again, we sit down with those communities and we negotiate a conservation agreement. Always no killing of snow leopard, always no killing of prey species, and then whatever terms we can work in. Sometimes it's a cap on herd size if we can work it in Mongolia on Snow Leopard Enterprises. Sometimes it's where they graze their herds to try and reduce conflict. But it's always a lively negotiation. It's very sporting. We enjoy it very much. So you sign that agreement every fall. And then we come back in the spring and we pay a base price for that order that we placed in the fall as well. So a community might make $1,000 selling those products to us. And there's a bonus though. When we're monitoring the terms of that conservation agreement and we come back in that next year, that next fall, if there's been any violation of the conservation agreement by anyone in the community, outside poachers, somebody not participating, or a participant, anyone breaks that agreement, they lose a 20% bonus. So that's $200. So $200 is a serious amount of money for a community, and what we do is we use that peer pressure to make it work. So if it was just one person, if every bonus was individual, you can get about $25 for a snow leopard pelt out in very rural Mongolia. It's a lot more if you're in the capital, but $25 out in this area. That is close to sometimes what a bonus might be for an individual. But by using that collective power and raising the stakes to up to $200, up to 20% of the overall purchase, that's what really helps this program go. And again, we monitor like crazy. And there's other benefits, especially with Snow Leopard Enterprises, have been so heartwarming. I mean, you've got women who are talking to us about feeling pride in their environment, feeling proud with the role that they're playing in their community. There was a poaching incident where a herder had put out a steel leg hold trap to catch a wolf, and a snow leopard stepped in it and was killed. It's a horrible situation. And the women in that community all lost their bonus, and they marched to the door of that guy, and they said, "You owe us $200. You broke the agreement. You killed a snow leopard. That was wrong. Pay us." Now, the guy didn't have $200, and we were really, but we were thrilled that they went and said they were taking conservation into their own hands, and that's exactly what we want. And so it's been really great. And women, 95% of the program participants are women. When they get extra money, it goes to food for their kids, it goes for health care, education, all the good things that make a family thrive. So I did talk really quickly about the mining as a growing threat, and I want to put this up because it's one of our best accomplishments, and it really happened because of the donor support we got last spring. This is down in the South Gobi Desert, and those green highlighted areas, these green highlighted areas are protected areas, and our research site is about right here. And all that purplish shading is prime snow leopard habitat. Here's our research camp right here. This gray area is all areas that the government allowed mining exploration permits on. We were absolutely blown away. Here we are running an international research thing, and the government does this. There's a cool law in Mongolia that allows for locally managed protected areas. And we sat down with the communities and we said, this is what's happened. What do you want to do? And they said, much to the surprise of the mining companies, we don't want the mines here. We do not want mines because all the workers they hire are from out of the country. Typically, China's like right here. So we're not going to give us jobs. They promise us jobs, but they don't. And then our water holes for our livestock get polluted. The miners are tearing up and doing terrible things that we don't want to have happen. We don't want this. And so we, on behalf of the community, and with all this data that we had on snow leopards, we were able to put together a proposal. We submitted it to the government. They turned it down. Community got together again, made some changes, submitted it again, turned it down. Community sent a delegation to deliver the third time, and they approved it. And now this area is all a locally managed protected area. This is the biggest victory the Snow Leopard Trust and the community. Yeah, seriously. We're so proud of those communities because they're taking their area, their lands into their own hands, and I think making good long-term decisions on behalf of their families. And we're not anti-mining. We're just don't mine in the areas that are the prime snow leopard habitat of, for an endangered animal. It just doesn't make sense. It's like, where do you mine? And you've got to be smart about it. The government needs to be smart about it. The communities need to be smart about it. But this was a huge success by the communities, and only happened because those partnerships that we have with them are very real, and we had enough data to be able to convince the government. So in closing, I get this question all the time. Can we save snow leopards? And I have been doing this for 11 years. I've been working in Central Asia for 20. And I could not do my job if I didn't believe the answer to this is yes. I mean, I can't, I raise money for the Snow Leopard Trust. I'm the director of the Snow Leopard Trust. It's a big part of my job. And if I didn't believe this, I would not be in front of you. And to be perfectly honest, I am more convinced today than the day I took the job 11 years ago that the answer to this is yes. And that gives me huge hope. Some of the main factors are snow leopards live in very rugged, inhospitable terrain, and that is a huge benefit for snow leopards. It's not densely populated. Another major factor is poverty is just endemic in this area. I mean, it's not an exaggeration when people are living on less than $1 a day. That's the reality. So small changes in income can have extraordinary impact on incentive for conservation. That works to our advantage. Snow leopards are an icon of many of the religions and cultures of this area. There are very few people who are excited to go out and kill a snow leopard. It's just not who they are. I mean, Buddhism is a strong part of the religion in this area. They're very powerful in that religion. And snow leopards don't eat people. Never been a recorded killing of a person by a snow leopard. It really works to our advantage. So I am more sure today than I've ever been that we could save these snow leopards. And the great thing is these community conservation programs, they're working. We're winning battles. We just need the resources to get bigger and fight enough battles to ensure that that population stops trending down and starts trending up. But we have the tools, we have a strategy, and really all we need is to be able to expand our efforts and make sure that we can work with enough communities to create that people-wildlife prosperity that I talked about. So I am absolutely 100% certain we can do this. I'm happy now to take any questions at all. I really appreciate your attention, and I love question and answer, so please don't be shy. I'd love to hear from you. Yes?
Do they teach the children about the conservation and the economic things that you were doing?
Yeah. So the question is, do we teach the children and about the just education about snow leopard in general and about the conservation programs? And just for the sake of time, I wanted to make sure that I got through enough. I didn't really talk about our conservation education programs, but absolutely. In India, for example, we do these eco camps where the kids come up into the mountains for 3 days, and it is a magical experience. We get journals from the kids. Many of them have not been in snow leopard habitat. They live in the area, but they're not moving out of their little village cluster. So we are a huge believer in education, but I did say the one caveat of that is that if we're doing education, it's going to be at a site where we're doing research or we're doing these community conservation programs because they really feel they have to reinforce one another. So yeah, we do education. It's critical, but it's just, in my opinion, it's critical but not sufficient, and they need to be married together, and that's what we do. So great. I'm sorry I didn't talk more about education, but I'm happy to do that at another time. Yeah, that's another great question. Yeah. So the question is, why? What do I say when people say, why should we care? And that's a great question. And I'm looking for help on this. I mean, I think there's multiple ways you can answer that. I mean, it's sort of the higher. First, you have to do you believe that snow leopards have a place on this planet? And if you do, then my opinion is it's very practical. If you can't save snow leopards, what's the hope for the snail darter or the spotted owl or any of the less charismatic species that are equally important in their little ecosystem, right? So if we can't save snow leopards, what's the hope? So at that highest level, I think I go there. But I really reject this. I get a lot. Why people have problems? Why aren't you doing wildlife? And to me, and I hope I explained a little bit of this, it's not one or the other. It is not one or the other. We are helping snow leopards because we care, and we're helping those people. If snow leopards were gone, I wouldn't be there. Those people would still be making $50 instead of $250. So to me, wildlife and people can help each other. And this, I feel like it's a false choice of you need to help people, and then we can worry about the animals. What? Really? Aren't we missing an opportunity of using people's love of some of these species to help people? Isn't that a better mix? So that, I think, is my real belief, is that when we say people or wildlife, that's the mistake right there. It is, how do we work with wildlife and people to help everybody have a healthier planet and a healthier environment?
Perhaps here's where John Muir ought to be quoted. Every time you tug on a single thing in nature, you find it attached to the rest of the world.
There you go. There you go. Exactly. Quoting John Muir. That's a beautiful quote. It really is. It's so true.
Brad, you want to mention about the website and being able to watch the tracking of all the cats and everything?
Absolutely. I planted. No, thank you, Kathy. So you can go to www.snowleopard.org, and you can go to our online shop. you know, and they make great Christmas presents, they make all those things, and so you're helping people, you're helping cats, and you're giving really interesting, cool gifts. So that's a great way to go. We also accept donations and all those other things. We have a blog there where we update all the time on the research project going on in South Gobi and on the mining and really anything relevant in snow leopard world. So our website is a great source for the most current stuff. We're trying to get better about keeping our website, you know, fresh and popping, but it's the blog right now that has any of the latest news is really good. And there's a direct link to our blog right off of the website. So thank you, Kathy. Yeah.
Brad, do they like lions have prides?
Right.
Do snow leopards do similar things, or are they so individual if they don't do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So do your lions have prides? Do snow leopards have prides? And they're individual animals. So they only come together at breeding season, and then it's a single mom situation. The guy's off, and it's up to the mom to raise those cubs. And that is by far the most perilous time for the female because she's got high food needs and low mobility. And so it's really challenging when the mom has cubs to not turn to domestic livestock or not get into trouble. So it's a very difficult time for the female snow leopards and her cubs because it's all on her. Some of the data is kind of interesting. We've always thought of the breeding period, December, January, maybe February, cubs born in the spring when the prey is the most rich. And so we're starting to see every once in a while some cats coming together at odd times. We will be learning more about that, but our current knowledge is that it's basically they're operating individually, both males and females with overlapping ranges but not together, and the mother is raising the cubs on her own. And one exception to that is those pictures you saw were sibling pairs. That first one when they were young, about a year, the mother was actually there. That second one, when it was just the three, the really big, beautiful cats, they've separated from the mom, and those three are kind of trying to find their own turf, and it's pretty soon then they'll part ways as well. But that's sibling. You'll see sibling groups every once in a while like that.
How many cubs do they have at a time? Is it normally a single birth, or double, or triple? Or?
We don't know for sure. One of the great things about working with zoos like Blank Park and others is that we learn from what's happening here in captivity, and typically it's between 1 and 3. Every once in a while you have a slightly larger litter. We think that the mortality rate's pretty high in the wild, but we don't know for sure, and anecdotally we've been kind of heartened to see some of these groups making it, you know, so that's been really nice to see, but it's anecdotal at this point in time. But yeah, between 1 and 3 cubs.
You do research involving the genetics of these cats. What can you tell us about what you surmise from that research?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what about genetics? What are we learning from genetics? So one of the exciting things that happened was in 2008, we funded a researcher, Dr. Lizelle Waits at University of Idaho, to try and crack the genetic code for snow leopards. And you can come, I'll do this all night, so I don't know when you need to stop me, but I will continue to do that. I'll stay as late as anybody wants to talk about snow leopards, but if I'm throwing anything off on the program, let me know. So what happened was there was a real narrowing of snow leopards several thousand years ago, and so their genetic homogeneity is very high. So if you look at the DNA of one snow leopard and the DNA of another and you don't know where you're looking, it looks like the same cat. So genetics used to be good for telling us a species, but nothing about the individuals. But Dr. Waits was able to, through some collaboration with the cheetahs that had the same similar situation, so they found areas on what they call the microsatellites of the DNA to find where to look to tell sex and individuality of the cat. So right now, with a scat sample or a hair sample or a blood sample, we can tell one individual from another, and we can tell lineage, and we can tell gender. So that's awesome. But what's kind of confusing, we were doing, at this research site, we collected all the scat we could find, and it turned out there were 55 cats. And our camera traps are showing us 26, right? So what's happening? Dead. They can't date a scat. And it's driving me crazy. Science has to solve this. This is easy, right? Somehow they've got to be able, something's going to degrade at a certain rate. They've got to be able to figure this out, but they haven't yet. So you don't know whether that scat you picked up is from a cat that was there a month ago, a year ago, 5 years ago. This is such an arid climate. They used to tell us that, oh, after one winter, there's no DNA that's going to be viable out of that scat, and that's a bunch of hooey. That is a bunch of hooey. Excuse my language. I'm sorry about that. So the trouble with genetics until we can figure that out is we either got to wipe it all out and then try and just take fresh and then we can do it, which is very time intensive, and or we've got to figure out how to age scat, and we haven't figured out how to do that yet. So we're learning a lot. It's going to be a great tool. Costs are coming down. It used to run about $200 to run a sample. Now it's about $50. But it's better, but it's not. It's like that technology I showed. It's genetics feels like kind of where we were with VHF collars. It's just not giving me what we need to save these cats yet, but it's closer. It's a lot closer than it was, and we're going to keep pushing on it. But fortunately, there's some other groups that are pushing on other cat species, and we hope then we just. Like I said, I'm a value-minded shopper, and if somebody else can pay for that work, and then we can benefit from it, all the better. So, yeah. Yes. What's their lifespan? So we know in captivity that snow leopards live to be about 19, 20 years old if it's a long-lived, healthy cat. So in the wild, we think it's significantly shorter to that. Whether it's 14 or 12 or where that line gets drawn, it's hard to say. As their physical capabilities diminish, then they tend to get in trouble. They start preying on livestock, and that's going to get them killed. So we know in captivity it's about 19 or 20, very much like a domestic house cat, and then falls in the wild, but we don't know how much. Yeah.
You touched at one point about dealing with the government to get it preserved. Do you have any sense of the governments in the different countries in which you're working? Are they supportive of the conservation efforts? Are they opposed or neutral?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what is the attitude of the governments where we work? And so it's really quite interesting. When we first started working in China, we were getting quite a bit of resistance. But as we got to know the government, because my dad always taught me you try and get yourself in the shoes of the other guy, right? You try and understand where they're coming from. And so you do that with the Chinese government, and they are very, very worried about that rural population, right? They do not want more poverty. They do not want more challenges. They are afraid of that group getting riled up, right? So they view conservation traditionally as keep people out. That riles people up, right? And poverty is so bad. So when we started talking about the government, we started talking about people, wildlife, prosperity. How do we make this work? All of a sudden, the government actually has gotten more supportive. So in most of the countries we work, we get no money, and we get tentative support for our work. So snow leopards are interesting. Boundaries tend to be borders. Snow leopards like mountains, so they work in really high conflict zones or tense zones. But so far, every time we've tried to do work on snow leopards on a particular border region, we have gotten permission in those 5 countries that we work. But we work really hard at relations with those government officials. It can be very frustrating and very time-consuming. So I give them a C-, for the support we get from them. And it's changing a little bit where India looks like they're going to put some money, the federal government, into the 5 states that have snow leopards. That would be a huge coup. But I'll believe it when we see the money. So we'll see. Yeah.
They don't have any predators or competitors besides humans.
Correct.
And the male does not come and kill cubs so to bring females into estrus again, or?
Exactly. So we do not believe that happens, and you'll see that with some of the other big cats. And we think that it's this overlapping home range and this sense of working around, together, that there is not that. And I think it's just a hypothesis at this point, but it's so difficult to make it in this terrain. I think my belief is that the species has figured out a way not to have that happen. Because if you've got, let alone the regular challenges of living, add in male snow leopards, popping cubs, you'd really, it could be the end of the species, seriously. So I think that we do not believe it happens, and we have no evidence that it does, which is a positive for the cats.
What's their status right
Yeah, I wish I could tell you for sure. You know, I really do. I am banging on our scientists like, how many were there? How many would we like there to be? I mean, look at our current estimate is 3,500 to 7,000. I mean, that's not, you know, pinpoint accuracy, right? I mean, we're struggling with this. So what we know is that snow leopards are still being persecuted in many areas. So we believe populations are going down there, and we know we're stable or slight increases in where we're working. And that's what we know. So my guess is it's still trending down, but at a much less precipitous rate than it was even 10 years ago. I mean, with the fall of the Soviet Union, which was more like 20 years ago, you know, it was horrible. They had really good protected areas and paid government staff. And when that system collapsed, those rangers were getting paid nothing, nothing. And they had guns, and they had knowledge, and they had access, and you had much more open borders. And so all of a sudden, we saw probably a 50% decline of snow leopards in Kyrgyzstan, you know, in that time period in the early 90s. It was awful, absolutely awful. So that has stopped, and things are stabilizing. So I think you know, the outlook is not horrible. That's about as good as I can say. And we think we've got a plan. We can bend that curve back up. Yeah.
Of the 26 or so that you have recognized by the cameras, how many of those are GPS collared?
10.
Okay. And so those 3 young ones that you captured on camera, those weren't GPS collared?
Yeah, we don't count cubs in our population. So that's a great question. So now those 3 the 3 older ones are in the 26 because we consider those separated from the mom. But go ahead.
At what age do they separate from the mom, and how far do they travel in terms of their dispersion?
Yeah, great question. So what age do they disperse and where do they go? So they disperse around 2 years, about 2 years old. Anywhere from 18, 24 months is where we're seeing it. Typically, we think we just saw a separation of a mother cub that we happen to have both with collars on. It's fantastic learning, and they have just separated. And what we'd really love to know is who makes it happen. Is it the young one who's like, I'm ready to have a guy, and you're cramping my style, Mom? Or nobody could relate to that here. No. Or is it the mom, you know, kicking out the cub because she's ready to breed again? So you don't know. But we know they've split. We know the cub is about 24 months, and we're watching where she's going. And right now she's searching. She has not found a set home range. You know, she's doing these little explorations. So it'll be really interesting to see. It's a big challenge for the cats to find a new safe home range. Big challenge.
How big is your organization?
How big is our organization? So Snow Leopard Trust has been around since 1981. We were founded by this phenomenal woman, Helen Freeman, who was the former curator of education at Woodland Park Zoo. So she fell in love with the cats when they came into the zoo out of the wild. They used to bring snow leopards out of the wild into the zoos in the 70s. That's been stopped. And so then she founded the trust in 1981, and at that point, I mean, it was a couple $1,000s. When I took over the trust, it was a $200,000 budget. This year, we have a $1.2 million budget. So I really love the fact that our support has grown. Some of it we've grown ourselves through the sales of the Snow Leopard Enterprises. We get about $200,000 a year from various zoos, including Blank Park, in which we're very, very grateful. Then we get individual donations and foundation grants. We haven't found any way. I'd love to figure out, if anybody has any advice, how to tie into corporate support better. We have not been able to figure out that connection. You know, a lot of it, they want it to be where they produce or where they manufacture or where they operate. So it's been really hard, but that's one area where we just have not been able to grow. But we're about 1.2 million this year. Yeah.
Is there a history of disease?
Is there a history of disease? That is a great question. There has been some research in the captive population about squamous cell carcinoma, and that's been a problem. But I believe they've developed a vaccine for that. I need keeper help on that. I'm pretty sure they have it. And there was just a cat that died in China from what we believe is mange. They probably got it from the prey species, which is very interesting. So we watch very closely if a blue sheep or an ibex population has mange going through it and the snow leopards are preying on those, it appears that that can transfer to the cats, and it can be fatal. So that's all I know. There's probably others, but we just don't know. So, do they breed with the same partner for life? We don't believe they do. No, we think that they are opportunistic. And is that a politically correct term? I think that's so. That'll work.
A partner twice, like 2 years in a row, or in the future?
So if a healthy female is breeding regularly, it'll be every other year. So she'll have her cubs, and she'll have the cubs with her. So then she'll skip that year, and then she would be available to be breeding the next that next year. So about 2 years apart. And I think there's nothing stopping if there's a dominant male in the area, and she doesn't have cubs anymore, then that very well could happen. I believe. I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be happening. But that's not the defining moment. She's not looking for that guy necessarily.
How long does it take for a cub to start breeding?
How long does it take? About 2 years. They become mature and ready for breeding. Yeah. I love these questions. This is a great crowd. Thank you so much. I really enjoy it. All right. Should I do one?
Yeah.
We got plenty of time. I love this. All right.
How does the survivability, if I can use that word, of this cat relate to that of other big cats?
Haha, that is a fantastic. Yeah. So, yeah, who do you want to bet on? If you're trying to guess which big cat species is going to make it, and obviously I want them all to make it. But if I had to, there are some critically endangered subspecies like Amur leopards and some of the subspecies of tiger. Tigers have it rough. They really have it rough. They're losing cats. There's organized crime involved in India and Russia that is big money, big operations, and it's scary what they're doing. I mean, there's been reserves in India that have been completely wiped out of tigers. And the demand for tiger parts in China still remains high. Most big cats, because they have big home ranges, are in trouble. We've got to solve this community issue with all the big cat species because they have huge home ranges, and protected areas they're wonderful, they're necessary, but they're like the education, they're not sufficient. The cats don't know the boundaries. I mean, there's so many protected areas that are less than 100 square miles, right? And how many? That's one snow leopard in a tiny snow leopard home range. Most of those, snow leopards using 5 times that area. What does that protected area really do? So they're important, but they're not sufficient. And you see that with all the big cats that are using a lot of space. All right. Did I wear you out? All right. Thank you very much for your patience. I really enjoyed it.